you're finding your family relationships challenging now that you're sober, you're going to love this episode. Whether it's your spouse and kids, your parents, or even friends that are your chosen family, things change when you get sober, and it could be surprisingly difficult to navigate the shift. Recovery gives you a chance to make these relationships even more fulfilling, as long as you develop the right skills and the right mindset. Stay tuned for some stories and advice that are sure to help you move on in the right direction.
Welcome to Through the Glass Recovery podcast, where we believe that connection is the opposite of addiction, vulnerability is the antidote to shame, and that recovery isn't just rewarding, but it's also a lot of fun. We're your hosts, Julie and Steve. Listen as we get together with friends to shed light on the hard things, talk about the other side of addiction, and how we create a life so full there's no space left for alcohol.
In case you haven't already heard, we host a sober happy hour on Zoom every Monday night. If you're tempted to try it, but you're still a little nervous, I just want to remind you that you can show up with your camera off and just listen and get a feel for what we do. You're welcome to stay entirely anonymous. We just want you to feel comfortable. We also just want you to experience the feeling of no longer doing this alone. If you want more details about the Sober Happy Hour, visit our website at throughtheglassrecovery.com.
All right, welcome everybody to Through the Glass Recovery podcast. We have kind of an international group today, which I think is awesome. We've got two lovely ladies from way across the pond, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves first. So I'm going to ask Patti to get us started. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm great. Thank you, Julie. Hi, Steve. Hi, Carrie. I'm really awesome to be here. I've listened to your podcasts for a while and I love them. So you guys are really awesome, helping a lot of people. So thank you for your service. I'm Patti Clark. I am recording right now from New Zealand. We have lived here for 30 years. I'm originally from San Francisco. I got sober in Tucson in 1988. And then we moved here in 1992. We had our kids, did that whole thing. Then we have two sons, and both of our sons fell in love with women in Europe and moved to Europe, and you just can't get further away. It's like bottom and top of the world. So my husband and I are in the process of moving to Portugal. We have residency now, and so we're here packing up our house of 30 years, raising two kids. I mean, it's a big job. But so I'm kind of in two places. I got sober the first time in Tucson, Arizona in 1988, 2 days before my 30th birthday. I was sober for almost 13 years. And a big part of my story is I got arrogant. I thought I knew it. I had done therapy. I had read all the books. I thought, I'm good. And also I got the recovery community to the small town where I moved to was very different. A lot of older men who had a real thing about put a plug in the jug, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth, just keep coming to meetings, quit complaining, quit your bitching, all that. And I thought, well, I can do this on my own. And long story short, I couldn't. I was out drinking for almost 13 years. And then after that, I decided I didn't really like myself very much when I was drinking. And so I came back into recovery, and this time around, I've been clean and sober for 10 years.
Awesome.
That is quite a story. And also, I am so glad you are back here in our world of recovery.
Oh, me too. Let me tell you. Everyone around me is tied into that topic that we're going to talk about.
Perfect. And you have a book coming out, and actually when this episode releases, it will have just come out. Do you want to tell us a little bit about it?
Thank you for asking, Julie. That's very kind. My book is called Recovery Road Trip, and it's a story. It's an allegorical narrative, so it's not a memoir, but it reflects a lot of my own story. And when I came back into recovery the second time, I was running workshops, and so at meetings and at workshops, I spoke to women who had relapsed. and I wanted to find out why. And so the story takes place by a woman who's traveling across country from Seattle to Boston, and each stop that she goes to, she meets different people and connects and learns important lessons on the way. And yeah, that's basically the story. And then the second half of the book, that's the first half. The second half is a journaling notebook. So it follows the journey of the protagonist, Meg, and it's journal entries or journal prompts, I should say, for 12 weeks. So that's
cool.
Yeah.
That's love that. That is so unique and original. There are tons of great Quitlet books out there, but that sounds like something I've never heard of before. So
that's what I'm hoping. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm excited for it to come out. It sounds like something I could really enjoy too. So thank you for sharing that. And we'll make sure we have a link in the show notes so everybody can check out Patti and her book and all of that good stuff. And yeah, thanks so much for being here. It's nice to
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And next up, we have Carrie Ann, where it is 4 a.m. And this woman has joined us from Australia to hang out on a podcast, which I think is amazing. So thank you so much for being here.
There's a first for everything. And this is a first, and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. It's
dedication. I love it.
No, thank you for having me. I reached out to, I think it was Julie who messaged me. I was really having a bit of a struggle. I'm almost 4.5 years sober, but I still have my moments, and I was having some issues surrounding guilt and shame, and I just reached out, and you pointed me to, I think it was a podcast with your daughter, Cor.
Yeah, okay.
And I listened to that, and that just, really sparked something for me. So I love what you do. I just, it's a much needed service that you provide. So thank you. So anyway, I'm Carrie Ann. I live in Perth, Western Australia now, but I'm originally from the UK. And I've been back and forth to WA since 2002. Last time I moved back here was 2014. Took me a little while to settle. I have one son who was also here, but at university now. And I work within a finance team in a manufacturing company locally. And I'm also studying. So I'm doing a diploma of counselling. And I wasn't entirely sure what I was going to do with it. Originally, it was just personal development, just tools to help me. But then I had a bit of an experience recently in hospital where they actually sent me somebody from the Centre of Wellbeing because I was a little bit sad. And that kind of really did clarify that that's what I want to do. So I want to go and talk to people who are alone and frightened and scared in the hospital setting. So that's really where I want to go with it. But also, I wouldn't mind doing something along the sobriety line of it as well. You know, a bit of sobriety coaching maybe, or support, or, you know, on the helpline, something like that. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic. Oh, I love that. And I love that you just felt like you needed to do the counseling and you weren't really sure. And then it showed up in your life exactly how you feel like to use that. That's incredible.
Yeah. It was much needed and well timed. It's not a service I knew they provided. So, you know, there's little services out there. Yeah.
Fantastic. Cool. Well, it is so nice to hang out with you too. It's just an honor to be with both of you ladies. I'm going to throw out a topic here for us. So one thing most people don't expect when they quit drinking is how much it's going to affect the other people in their lives. It comes as a shock to find out that your closest relationships start shifting and adjusting and feeling much different after you put down the bottle and start doing what we call the work of recovery. And when that happens, it can feel frustrating, disappointing, and can even make people question whether quitting drinking was really the best thing for them. And so that's what we want to talk about today. How have your family relationships changed since you got sober? What have some of the challenges been, and what have some of the positives been?
Anyone can go.
The floor is yours. Yeah, somebody can dive in and we'll just have a conversation.
So for me, I have to say, I've had very little negative impacts to my relationship. they've all been really pretty positive. I was lucky. I know not everybody has supportive people in their lives, which is where support like this comes in. But, my ex-husband and my son have really been my biggest support. They were gentle with me. They were forgiving when I honestly didn't deserve it. And, I wasn't bullied into quitting drinking, but, that it was very clear that it wasn't it wasn't good. And when I finally did, get sober, they continue to be my biggest support, my biggest cheerleaders. As far as, people who kind of didn't align with that, they were more people who were kind of, I guess, acquaintances, people you might have met through work, and I did let some of that go. I had to, because, you always get I did, but you will just have one, won't you? You will just have one. I actually had a work night out where I was told, you're coming out tonight and you will drink. You will be drinking.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
And that was really hard, and that was unsettling. That it wasn't hard because I felt like I was at risk of drinking, because I've actually, since about probably 3-4 weeks into getting sober, I've not had that desire to go back. Once I got over that real messy bit at the beginning, I've not had the desire to go back drinking. But yeah, people like that, I realized pretty quickly that I had to be careful with who I was aligning myself with and who I was socializing with and what I was doing socially. Family, like my mom came over to visit me in February, and it's the first time she's kind of said, "Oh, will you be all right if I have a drink?" And I'm like, "Yeah, Mom, that's fine. Like, I have no issue with being around people who have a drink." But I found that a bit odd, because that's the first time that kind of they've ever said anything like that. So everyone's really mindful of it in their own way, and everyone's really supportive, in their own way. So aside from losing a few acquaintances, and I can live with that, I'm really lucky. I've got an amazing support.
Whoa. Nice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really, really neat. I love that your mom cared enough to bring that up and to ask. I think that's really special.
Yeah, and it's just because, obviously, I've always drank. I've drank since I was 14, but it was never an issue really until I moved back here, and it really did creep up. It was a real creepy situation, It was, and a combination of things, I think, led me down that path. But my mom's in the UK, so although they know that I've had an issue, and and everybody does it, I tell everybody straight up, because it's just easier to just get that conversation out of the way. But she wasn't here, she wasn't here when that whole thing was kind of happening. So, yeah.
Does she notice a change in you? I'm guessing you guys probably talk on the phone, things like that. Has she noticed a change in you over the last 4 years?
Oh, yeah. And my dad says all the time, like, if you see pictures on Facebook and you just look, he says, "You look so happy now." And I was like,
Oh, I love that.
My mom says that to me all the time.
Yeah.
Same thing. She's like, "You just look so happy." Like,
And it's like what Patti was saying, I didn't, at the end, towards the end of my drinking and getting sober, I didn't recognize myself, and I didn't like myself at all, and then you fall into that cycle, don't you? You just continue, you drink to forget how much you hate yourself.
Yeah.
Certainly that's what it was for me. And, I just wanted to check out and just go to sleep and start again the next day, So yeah, it's really noticeable, and I notice it and I feel it. And I think that's why, I'm so determined to never go back to that, because my life now, there's not a drink on this earth that would taste nice enough to make me risk what I have now.
Right. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah. My story is a little bit different. I grew up in a very dysfunctional alcoholic family. My mother died of alcoholism when I was 16. And so I had a very strong role model of what not to do, but it didn't stop me. When I gave up drinking the first time, my sister, there's only two of us in my family, my sister and my sister had been sober for 2 years. My sister brought me to my first AA meeting, but I went there to support her, right? I didn't have a problem. I just wanted to support her. And 2 years later, a year and a half later, I got sober. And it was really interesting because my husband now, who was my boyfriend then, had said, I can't be around you when you're drinking. And we almost split a couple of times, but it was actually a visit to a tarot reader or an astrologist. She did some tarot, but she was an astrologist. She did my chart. We were moving from Ashland, Oregon to Tucson, Arizona. She did my chart and she was looking at it and I was listening to her. And she pointed and she said, well, this square, it looks like there's a lot of addiction. I said, yeah, my mother died of alcoholism when I was 16. She said, oh, that makes sense here. But there's this too. And I said, well, yeah, my dad's a practicing alcoholic. And that would fit. And she said, yeah, but even more. And I said, well, my sister's in recovery.
Classic avoidance, right?
Exactly. Totally.
Classic avoidance.
And she said, oh, your sister's in recovery. That's wonderful. And then she pointed at a spot and looked me in the eye and said, Patti, are you an alcoholic? And I just burst into tears. I ran out of her house and I got in the car and Jeff and I were driving from Ashland, Oregon to Tucson, Arizona. And I was sobbing and sobbing. And, Jeff was sitting there driving thinking, what do I do with this? And he said, it's probably a good thing to hear it from somebody else because you didn't hear it so well from me. Wow. And so that ties it into how people reacted. When I got sober the first time in 88, when I was 30, Jeff was relieved, and those were his words. I just asked him yesterday when we were outside doing some gardening. I said, this is the topic for my podcast tomorrow. Talk to me about what you thought. And he said, the first time I was relieved. I was really relieved. When you started drinking again, you hit it so well, I barely noticed. And, I was a master at doing that. And yeah, we were so good at that. We were
master at hiding shit.
Master, yeah.
So good.
So good. Nobody will know else. But when I got sober the second time, what he said was, because when I did drink, I got really messy and we had kids. And so Jeff was saying the main thing that came up was grateful because we had arguments about it, etc. And he was worried about the kids, even though when I made amends to the kids, they both said, we didn't notice so much. But that's because everybody I hang around with drank as much as me because, that's what you do. So the pushback that I got was more from people that I drank with. When I moved here, I was completely sober. I said I would never drink. I would not be my mother. I would never be my mother. And then I told you the story and I sort of pulled away. And you guys have to understand, and all of these mothers, they were the yummy mummies and they had beautiful decks and good wine, they had such good wine. They were the wives of the doctors and the lawyers and they'd sit on the deck and drink the wine. I had a really good excuse here, okay? I had a really good, it's ludicrous.
Excuse, that's the thing.
Great excuse.
Great excuse.
Oh man, denial is a beautiful thing.
Oh God.
And so those are the people I was hanging out with. So my kids didn't notice it anymore because I was just one of them. And when I gave up drinking, that's who I heard from. Oh, you were a lot more fun when you drank. Oh, come on, just have one. Oh, it's such a beautiful day. And I just got this great bottle of, Capsap or whatever. And it was really interesting to notice that I really, like Carrie was saying, I just had to distance myself from some people because not that I was tempted, but they got boring real quick. It's like I'd had a couple of glasses of soda water. They were into their third glass. And it was like, oh my God, this is not fun. It's not funny. And you're boring.
Frank.
So, yeah. So that was the pushback. My sister was overjoyed because both times, because, she was my dear friend. My father, the first time, he was not alive when I got sober the second time, but the first time when I got sober, my father was very uncomfortable because now he had his 2 children, his 2 daughters, both in recovery. And no one likes that mirror.
That mirror is nasty mirror.
No, nasty mirror. So my father didn't like it at all and said, you don't need that. You're fine. You're not drinking too much. Oh, says the man who's on his, 3rd whiskey. So yeah, that was some of the pushback was not so much a hard stop it, but like, you don't need it because you're making me very uncomfortable with your not drinking.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
From my experience, for me, it was a little bit different because just after a year of being sober, I separated from my wife.
Mm-hmm.
I woke up to a relationship that was very broken. A lot of it was caused by me, for sure. And it ended up being or having enough resentment, even though she was super supportive. I have to say this, she was super supportive of my sobriety. Absolutely. Of all the meetings and everything else that I did, and when I got involved with the online community and stuff like that, like, I didn't hear too much pushback from that. It still created distance within our relationship to the point where we were better off without each other. So that happened. And then, like what you guys talked about, social circles, pretty much everyone at that point in time was an acquaintance. And so they were all drinking buddies. And so I distanced myself from that. It was just uncomfortable and, like you said, boring. It's like, you know what? You might think I'm not any fun anymore, but neither are you. Right? Like, in all honesty, it's like, I've heard this same story 4 times. I don't need to hear it again. I mean, I was there for that.
Right.
Right? But we're good. And I kind of began a search to find out where I fit in, where I was comfortable, because I definitely didn't fit in or belong to any of those circles anymore. I drank to fit into them.
Yeah,
that's where I thought I belonged. Sitting at the bar, hanging out with random people, thinking, you know what, I'm so good at, meeting people or whatever, because that's just crap. I never really had any connection there, and so. Back to family, my relationship with my parents, especially my mother, continued to get better. And part of the reason why, and probably a major reason why, was I started to learn how to be honest and vulnerable. And I started to learn how to have a real conversation with another human that didn't involve me wearing a mask, or multiple masks, or hiding, or lying, or avoiding, you name it. I started to become a real human, a real man, I started to learn more about myself, and then I got to share that. And so
someone who was really open to receiving it.
With someone, yes, and you say that because you know this, right? Like, she was very open to receiving it. And when I quit, she's still my biggest supporter. If I have one person that is my very biggest supporter in my family, it's absolutely my mom. I still get a good morning message from her every morning, and she's 1,600 miles away now. That's because I moved. But that was one relationship that continued to get better. My mom started getting vulnerable with me, and we started having like real conversations. And this didn't happen fast. This happened over the course of, 2 years. My first year, I was still, the relationship was still in its infancy. Yeah. I was still in my infancy. And then the second year, a little bit changed and things grew, and I quit my job and I left my wife and those sort of things. And I did those because I had to do those for me. And then I ended up asking if I could move into mom and dad's house because I was going through major life changes. And then that changes the relationship too. So the relationship with my sister got a little bit better. the relationship with my brother-in-law kind of got worse. And then, you know, you're not the life of the party anymore because I'm at the wrong party.
Yeah.
And then I have the relationship with my father where you talk about being the mirror. And I started growing a backbone so I couldn't be manipulated anymore. And I started having a voice that I stood behind that couldn't get pushed around.
Yeah.
And that created a rift in our relationship. So if there's a relationship within my family that got worse, the one that I just need to accept that this is where it is probably that one. Although there's a form of mutual respect in there that I don't know that will ever get communicated. I think that's just where it exists and that's where it lies, and I've struggled with it myself. And I've thought about it hard and long, how to deal with it. You know, you get into, well, I got to set boundaries and I got to communicate and and you go hard and fast at all of these things, and sometimes they just are what they are.
Yeah.
And allowing that to be what it is instead of trying to make it better like it's my job. If I don't have a willing participant, and this is what I've learned so far, if I don't have a willing participant on the other side of this, I am fighting a solo battle, and there's something I need to work on.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the main things that that I learned in my earlier sobriety, like in the second or third year, because the first year you're just trying to find your feet, is all about codependence. And, you know, how codependence just shows up in families, and that pushback and you know, and in early recovery, you know, what you were talking about, Steve, that sort of black belt, recovery around codependence, like I am going to set these boundaries and I am going to do this. And so learning how to be a little more flexible with it, but also watching people in your life say, we liked the dance better when you were drinking. And now that you're not, we'd like you to step back into that dance because
you made me comfortable. You made me comfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
That right there.
Absolutely. In numbers.
That right there is like my story, right? They wish that I would go back to the way that I was because that's where they were comfortable.
Absolutely.
And so where I'm hearing you guys talk about like your relationship with your spouse got better, your relationship with your mom got better, Steve, or whatever, like when I look around, very few of my relationships have improved. And I'm listening to you guys kind of like I'm contemplating this stuff as we go. So this is all like raw and not planned out. But so I'm surrounded by people in my life, and I have been forever, that are basically emotionally unavailable, right? That's my parents, that's my husband, that's been my friends. They're all emotionally shut off. There's like this wall up. And so there's no connection there. And then there's my relationship with my daughter. My sister, she's 17, and she's very emotionally available. And that relationship has improved dramatically. And so I feel like for me, and I don't know if this is for everyone, but for me, it's like the relationships where there is emotional availability, where there is the possibility of true connection and vulnerability, those relationships improve. Mm-hmm. It's the relationships where there isn't any emotional availability, that it's like, you know, throwing your emotions at a brick wall and it goes falling flat. Those relationships get worse in recovery. At least that's been my experience. And I look at like my whole life, I didn't have self-worth. I didn't feel good about myself. I didn't like who I was, like you ladies were saying. And so my way of coping with that was to run around and be freaking amazing. So I'd be like, please like me, please like me, please like me. What can I do to make you like me more? So hopefully I find a reason to like myself. And we all know that just, it doesn't work. It falls apart. But when I quit drinking, then I started finding the self-worth, and then I didn't need to hustle for everybody to like me. And so all of these people around me that are so used to me bending over backwards to make them happy and to fit into the box they think I should fit into and look the way that I think I should look. And that doesn't happen anymore. And so I feel like I'm surrounded by my immediate family and like my family of origin. I feel like those people would be so much more comfortable if I would just go back to the way that I was. And like my mom, she's told me before, like, you didn't really drink that much. Like, You had no idea, Mom. And my parents don't drink. They're not drinkers. I never grew up around alcohol. So it's not the mirror thing you guys are talking about. I think it's just the vulnerability. I'm throwing my flaws and vulnerabilities out there for the world to see. And that makes people uncomfortable too. But maybe that's a lot of what it is. We're making the people around us uncomfortable. So then those relationships can start to suffer too.
I think it takes a lot of time. And I'm only 3.5 years into this. So Patti, you can probably voice this a lot better just through experience, because I don't have a lot of it. I don't have a lot of it on the other side of this, really, in the grand scheme of things. Even though 3.5 years is awesome, it's just not a lot of, I've learned more about who I am. I've learned how to better communicate what my needs are. And I've learned that it's not all about me. And inside of doing all of these things and practicing it and failing and then getting better, and I'm changing. And when I am changing, those people who've known me as this X figure in their life for 20 years, and then all of a sudden I'm not that anymore in a really short period of time, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, then I'm the one who's made the drastic change. And I really can't expect them to be like, oh yeah, no, what you're doing is freaking great because you've been keeping care of me for the past 20 years. Why aren't you doing it now? So I think even in this short period of time, these 3.5 years, all of the growth, I don't know what another 5 years of this has, but there's opportunity in there for relationships that don't exist right now to change, because growth might be there for them as long as I continue to be available myself. And I think that's where it's hard to accept.
Mm-hmm.
That might be just the way things are, and it maybe won't get any better. But one of the things I've had to do with family relationships is get rid of expectations of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's huge.
That's huge. I agree. That is massive.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Steve.
No, you go. Have it.
I was just going to say that I love the work of Gabor Mate. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he talks so much about the trauma that all of us drank to push down, and drank or used whatever we used in our addiction, because in my opinion, everybody's an addict, but especially those of us in recovery have multiple addictions. Whatever, when we push down one, it's like whatever that game was. When whack-a-mole, that's it. The next one pops up. And for me, so much of that, what you're talking about, Steve, I had to be sober for about 2 years before I found any equilibrium to start doing my work. I mean, we talk about the work of sobriety being, getting sober, finding strength. Well, then the real work begins. Because, what Gabor Mate was talking about with the trauma, once we get rid of that which was numbing us out, that we didn't want to feel anymore, well, we don't have that numbing out thing anymore, so there it is.
Yeah.
And when that pops up again, we've got to find ways of coping with it. And whatever that looks like. And Julie, my God, I can relate to what you were saying. I danced around my family. I was the mascot. I was cute. I would make everybody laugh. I would make sure that everybody's, food was filling it, whatever it was.
Right.
I wanted to make everybody feel okay, because then maybe I would survive.
Yeah,
maybe.
absolutely.
And I danced as fast as I could. And yeah, once that trauma pops up and you're not numbing it anymore with whatever drug or booze or whatever it is, then you've got to start dealing with this stuff. And all of those dysfunctional relationships are right in the headlights. Mm-hmm. And it takes a hell of a lot of work. Jesus, I was in therapy for so many years, and I don't think that ever ends. But and these relationships all bring these things to the foreground. You know, that's where our work is with the relationships and what that brings up. I think we could all sit in a cave as ascetics and do just peachy. But
right.
the real work comes with these relationships and how we're learning to navigate life.
Yeah. So I noticed, and this is a bit of a shift for me. So I'm 3 years sober, just to kind of put that into perspective. But it's been really painful to spend time around my parents and even my husband, because I feel like I'm this disappointment now, right? I'm torn because I'm so proud of myself for being sober, and not just that, but for really finding ways to love myself and change my mindset and the way I see the world. And it's been so good and so positive for me. And yet it's so difficult for them because I'm not making them happy. And so I feel like I'm this disappointment. And so I'm torn. I'm back and forth between disappointing the people that are supposed to love me and that I'm supposed to love, and then, you know, doing exactly what I need to do for myself. And it's been a really uncomfortable place for, like, since I quit drinking, to be that person. And the more I stood up for myself, I think, Steve, you talked about that, the more friction it caused. And I just noticed this the other day when I was at my parents' house. I'm able to step back, and, like, there's this healthy version of disconnect that I've been able to kind of grasp onto. I still love them. I still want them to be in my life, but I also can't do the dance, like Patti was talking about, to be everything that they wish that I could be. And now I'm in this place where I'm like, here's who I am, and it's okay if you don't like that, and it's okay if that makes you uncomfortable, and I still love you, and we can still have a relationship, but I'm over here and I'm still okay. And it's okay for me to not be what you want. And it's kind of an interesting shift that's happened, I think, probably just in the last 6 months or so, where I can be okay with me and they cannot be particularly okay with me, and we can still coexist, and that's still okay. Their views of me no longer affect my own self-worth or the way that I see myself. And I think that's a really healthy version of disconnect. It's like disconnecting with love, right? And they talk about that. And when you learn all about codependency and you read Codependent No More, there's the disconnecting with love. And everybody in recovery needs to read that book.
Absolutely.
And I read it early on, and I think I'm still just barely grasping how to really apply some of those concepts. But this is an important one for me. And it's been a little bit life-changing these last few months.
What are you thinking, Carrie Ann?
I think as well, like, the further down the track you get, the more you do learn about you learn about yourself, but you learn about, you know, your values, you learn about what you accept, what you want, your beliefs. And I don't know if it's an age thing as well, but you get to the point where you do just kind of say, well, no, this is what I believe in, and I won't be swayed anymore. Like, you know, when I was in my 20s or my 30s, you know, people, I think I am a bit of a people pleaser. And, you know, and probably wouldn't speak your mind or just agree with somebody for the sake of keeping peace and things like that. But I think for me, the biggest growth was learning about myself and learning about what was important to me. And I guess learning what I wanted my life to look like, you know, and so doing the work. It's like what Patti was saying, you know, the first year and a half to kind of 2 years is a bit of a whirlwind, and it's a bit of a high all of its own. Like, you know, I was getting out and doing new social things, you know, meeting new people, meeting the right people, you know, doing new activities, hobbies, all of that sort of stuff. And then, you know, I hit a bit of a patch where I was never tempted to go back to drinking, but it did get pretty dark for a while. And I was really struggling. And I think it was because I had just kind of, I thought, oh, well, I'm sober now, so everybody in my life is happy that I'm sober, and I'm happy that I'm sober. But then all of a sudden, and it just hit me like a train, and I just got absolutely sucked into my own head about the pain I had caused everybody else while I was drinking. And I found that really, really hard to shake. And my, my relationship with my son is by far the relationship that hasn't improved since I got sober. And I honestly don't think, had I not stopped drinking when I did, I wouldn't have had a relationship with them. I don't think. Me and my ex-husband, we actually separated probably a year and a half or more before I actually got sober. But we still shared the same property until our son went off to university. So we were all kind of still in a family unit, if you like. And that was great. But I remember after one night of drinking till I passed out, my son gave me a letter, and it wasn't a "you must stop drinking" letter. It was just everything that they felt and the impact that my drinking was having on them. And they basically said, I want my fun man back, And you do think when you're drinking that you're fun, like, but and I guess I kind of was to a point, and then I would just get antagonistic and argumentative and horrible. And my ex-husband used to say, your face changes, like you, and you become an absolute different person. And then you wake up the next morning and you've got oh, what happened there? What did I do? What did I say? And by then it's too late. But this letter was just so full of love, basically, and saying, you're making it very hard for me to love you. It wasn't saying I don't love you, but it's saying you're making it very hard. And to my absolute shame, that letter was not the thing that stopped me drinking. It wasn't. It was soon after that, but I've kept that letter, and it's a tough read, but it's a letter that I read fairly often. Just to I guess remind me of just how loved I am. Yeah. So when I'm struggling and thinking, oh God, what's my purpose now? And like I have to remember that I am loved, and the fact that my son's an adult now and still chooses to spend time with me, and like you were saying, you have that. My son's always, has always felt that they can come and express anything to me, and we can talk about anything and things like that, and that letter, I mean, God, I don't even know how. So I've been sober 4 years now. So they were maybe, when this letter came, I'm trying to desperately do the math. So they were what, 13, 14, maybe a little bit older when they wrote that letter. And I couldn't have done that at that age. I couldn't have done that in my 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever. And that's what I was going to say as well. Like in the very beginning, when I got sober, like Jasper we're very huggy, we're very tactile and stuff like that. But they would hug me, and I could kind of sense that they were having a sniff just to see like the feeling for the day, and just so there's that. It's been 4.5 years almost of like rebuilding that trust with people, and that doesn't come overnight. But we go away, we go on holiday together, we meet up for dinners. Although we don't live together anymore, we see each other regularly. We go to shows together. None of that would have happened had I not stopped drinking when I did. And I just, it can only get better, I think, as time goes on.
I got a fun story, because this is definitely a sobriety story. I've got 2 girls. They're 7 and 9. And for the first 3-4 years of their lives, I was at my worst. And for the most part, I don't think they're going to remember a whole heck of a lot of it. But after I quit and my self-confidence started to grow and I started to be okay in my own skin, I am way more fun of a dad than I ever was when I was drunk. Like, we'll get out in the parking lot and we'll be in a Walmart parking lot or go and get groceries or whatever it is, and we are the only silly people skipping through the whole parking lot and just having fun. And if I don't do it, the girls are like, why are we skipping, Daddy? Come on. And like, and I don't, it doesn't bother me. I can have fun with them authentically in public now.
Yeah.
Whereas before, that was just something I was way too worried about what everyone else was going to think. And really, in the end, why it doesn't matter. But I get to show up now. And that's made a world of a difference. And, you know, my jokes are mine and they're everything. It's just the version of outgoing that shows up and that exists today is a hell of a lot better. And it's a hell of a lot more fun than it was 3.5 years ago.
It's like everything you do, you know, is kind of honest and genuine. Or that's how I feel. Like every decision I make, I know I'm making with clarity. Like I haven't got that kind of cloud of, you know, that booze fuzz. That's kind of
and then when you make a wrong one, you feel it.
You do.
Absolutely.
You're like,
you know.
Oh, I just screwed that up.
But that's okay too.
It is. It's absolutely fine. Yeah.
And but at least you know that you were in. You know, you had a clear mind when you made that choice, and I like that. I really like that feeling. Yeah. But like, I mean, me and Jasper a couple of years ago went back to England for Christmas, and we went to Disneyland Disneyland Paris, and it's the first time we've gone there since they were 9, and we still held hands and skipped through that park, and like, and you know, we had little dance parties in the kitchen, just impromptu, you know, that might, you know, and we laugh and we get, and it's all real.
Yeah, that's the big thing right there, is that it's real.
It's real, yeah. And you know, when I was drinking, I mean, toward, you know, when the drinking was at its worst, you know, the only thing I could think about was like getting in from work. The first thing I did was bottle lid was off, and then, you know, all I could think about was how quickly can I get dinner cooked, served up, cleaned up, so that I can sit down and just finish the rest of this bottle. You know, there was no real like kind of interaction or anything. I mean, I still showed up as a parent. You know, I never missed anything, but there was no genuine interactions because, like, at that stage, I wouldn't have wanted to talk to me. So why would my teenage son wanted to talk to me? You know, So it's
I think that's huge. That's our relationships now are genuine and they're authentic. We may have been there, we may have been present physically, but now that we're present mentally and emotionally also, I think we're developing these relationships that have a very genuine feel to them that carries through into the heart and carries you through all of your days. It's completely different now.
Yeah, I agree. And Julie, I just wanted to say something tied into what you were saying, because what I found is after I was sober for a while, a woman here in the town where I live in New Zealand, Rosie, she and I started a new meeting, 12-step meeting that focused on emotional sobriety. Because what I found out is that the longer I was clean and sober, I really struggled with people that were not emotionally present. I mean, I really related to what you were saying. And then the more I recovered that and was around people that were, the more I struggled again with, like, come on, meet my vulnerability. Come on.
I'm very much the same. So we actually host a meeting on Zoom. I'm not sure if you've seen that or not. But we host a meeting on Monday nights that's based all in emotional sobriety. And so I've found the same thing. I show up at these meetings and I'm meeting all of these wonderful people who can meet me where I'm at. Yes. And then it just shines a light on these relationships in my life that are lacking that, and that I just can't. I mean, I'll keep reaching and I'll keep trying, but the more of these connected relationships that I'm forming, which a lot of them are through our meetings, the more I see what my other relationships, my previous relationships really were. And it's painful. It's hard.
Shines a light on the emptiness that exists in them.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's what it does.
That's massive. It really is. And my experience is, unless the people that I'm close to are willing to do their work, either go to Al-Anon or go to something that's some kind of, excavation where they can approach the relationship open-hearted as well. Because if I'm walking in with my heart wide open, you've got to meet me, because otherwise
somewhere. It doesn't even have to be like all of the way, but there's got to be like some sort of effort that goes to try and match what's coming the other way.
Absolutely.
They have to earn that, right? Like I've said, like you said, if I'm walking in with my heart wide open, that essentially to me feels like I'm walking into this conversation, this interaction, stripped naked for you to see everything. And when you talk to someone who can't meet you there, it's like they're just staring at you awkwardly, and that's kind of, I guess that's maybe a weird analogy, but that's what it feels like. It's so uncomfortable.
It's a perfect analogy.
But it's so uncomfortable. And if they're just willing to even try, just to open their hearts to try, we connect with people on all levels. We do. And we have people that come to our meetings that are in all levels of recovery when it comes to the emotional recovery. You can connect with anybody who's got an open mind and an open heart.
Yeah,
that's what it comes
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
and I found that the people, in recovery, that's one of the reasons that I do stay in 12-step meetings. Some of it really pushes me, and I struggle, but that's some place where people do walk in and will strip bare, to use your analogy, and where I can go into a room and I can vomit whatever's going on all over the floor, and no one's either telling me to clean it up or is trying to clean it up. It's like, okay, yep, that's there. This is a place you can just leave that, and that's okay. And I'm wide open, and if I sob, that's okay. That's what I needed. Yeah. Instead of somebody quickly running and getting a box of tissues like, here, deal with that, because I am so uncomfortable with your tears.
Right.
Yes.
And everyone's there, everyone's made the choice to be there. Nobody's forcing them to be there. So, they've done the hard work by getting themselves to the meeting or getting themselves on your Zoom group. So, everybody wants to just keep getting better and keep doing good things.
Yeah.
So you're all there with, for the same reason, with shared purpose, So yeah, it's great. I'd love to get on 20 of Zooms.
I hope you'll come.
Yeah, it's
great.
It is.
The timing is probably terrible, isn't it?
Well, it's 8:30 in the morning on Monday for her, basically, because she's completely straight up 12-hour different.
Yeah.
So, sorry. Well, from us, she's 14. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm 12. Yeah.
You're 12. So.
No, that's not true.
You're even another 4.
Yeah.
So
where are you guys? Where are you guys again?
We're in Mountain Time, right in the middle.
Then we're in Colorado.
So you guys are 6 hours ahead of me, but I'm a day ahead of you.
Yeah.
So really, that gets too confusing if you say 18 hours, but I will definitely try and come.
I would love to have you guys. Yeah.
And it's not program based or anything like that. It's literally like this podcast episode. There might be 15 people, 20 people in the room. And before I'll finish off with an advertisement for our Sober Happy Hour. That's what we call it. We changed it. We called it Sober Zoom Support Group, and now we're just going to call it Sober Happy Hour.
Perfect.
Sounds better.
And it does. It sounds awesome. And really, what we do is it's this. If there's 15 or 20 people that show up at the meeting, we'll introduce the topic just like we do here. Julie or myself host it, and then we go into breakout rooms where you're in a group of 4 or 5 people. That's how this podcast was created. Was basically on that concept. And it's just people that are sober or want to get sober or whatever it is, sharing life.
Yeah.
And
perfect.
That is what recovery is all about.
Yeah.
Coming in and vomiting, getting whatever you need off your chest. And then if you ask for help to clean it up, you have way more people than what you need to help you clean it up. It's just the way it works. And so this is, if you guys, we would love to have you guys It's always amazing to have more people. We love it. But anyways, you two were phenomenal guests. You guys shared so much amazing things. We talked about social circles changing, our family relationships changing because we changed.
Yeah.
It started with us and our change, and we can't really expect everyone to like what's going to come next when we decide that growth needs to become a part of our life. And we all talked about that growth and the emotional sobriety part and the emotional growth, the really figuring out what connection looks like to us and then kind of chasing it down. And I think we all did that.
Yeah.
And removed people from our lives that either no longer served a purpose or they weren't for us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say that it isn't difficult. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it's fulfilling as hell because it really can go both ways. Sometimes you land square in the middle. Anyways, I want to say thank you so much, Patti, from New Zealand, and thank you so much, Carrie Ann, from Australia. I love the reach here. It's awesome.
Yes.
Thank you for your time. Thank you, Carrie Ann, for waking up and being here at 4 a.m. in your time. This is absolutely amazing. Really appreciate both of you guys and your time today. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, it's
Thank
been
you
great.
so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thanks for sharing this space with us this week. If you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you like, subscribe, and follow Through the Glass Recovery so you never miss an episode.